There's two more things I want to talk about in terms of biomes around the world. The first is that there's great number of variation within each type of biome. Now, we described, for example, what a desert looks like, or that deserts usually typically have very little precipitation and a lot of hot temperatures. But within that context, there's a lot of different kinds of deserts. Look at the pictures. You have duny deserts, rocky deserts, you have more mountainous deserts. What's the difference between these deserts? Well, everything. The biotic factors might be different, the things that live in it. The abiotic factors might be different, the soil type, the types of rocks, the humidity. So deserts truly, usually, are going to be located in tropical areas. Although even that, there's exceptions. We talked about the fact that there are some temperate deserts, and by all intents and purposes, polar regions are deserts because there's barely any rain that falls in those places, or snow. It's just frozen because it's so cold. Now, what I'm trying to say here is that there are as many kinds of deserts as there are places on the earth, because every single desert will have its own kind of microclimate, its own unique set of conditions, its own continent, its own surface currents are going to be around, its own wind currents and ocean currents and proximity to land and topography and soil, and all the biotic factors and abiotic factors are going to be unique to each ecosystem. That means that while we say deserts are alike, we also have to understand that there's many different types of deserts and that no truly desert is the same. So there's a great amount of diversity within the biomes. You see that? That makes sense? Finally, one more point about this is that biomes don't just go, woof, now I'm in the desert. I used to be in a forest, now I'm in the desert. It's not like that. There's a little transition as you're traveling. You must have noticed this before. So if you like driving from one place to the other, you will notice that I was in a sawgrass environment, and then all of a sudden I'm starting to see a little more wood, shrubland maybe, and then all of a sudden I'm in a coniferous forest. Like, what's going on? Perfect example of that is mountain weather, right? As you go up the mountain, you see the change from one type of ecosystem to the other. And you see in these pictures several examples of that. There's transitions between one ecosystem and the other, where the ecosystem slowly transitions from one kind to the other. These areas of transition are called ectonones. Ectonones, all right? So these ectonones are very important because they are at the edge of ecosystems. And there's going to be something that we call edge effects on these ectonones. There's going to be a lot of diversity in these areas because a lot of living things that live in these in-between areas will have adaptations or tolerance or niches that fit in between one ecosystem and the other. So that actually inspires diversification between the species, because you can have what is called gene flow. Some species from one and species from the other can start intermingling and creating hybrid species in the middle area. So that's called a hybrid zone. We learn more about that when we talk about evolution and microevolution, how species form. Now, it's true that a lot of species will prefer to live inside the ecosystem and not really in the edge. But the edge does allow for diversification of niches. It allows species living in that ecosystem to have maybe explore a different kind of ecosystem and kind of expand its territory if possible. So ectonones tend to increase the diversity that exists within the ecosystem. And however, one more thing it's important to say about this: if all is left is ectonones, then that's actually going to decrease the biodiversity. Because if you actually cut down a lot of the ecosystem and destroy it, all that's going to be left is the hybrid zone. In that case, all the species which actually rely on the interior and spend most of its life inside the ecosystem will suffer and die. And that's actually the majority of the species. The way the ectonodes increase variety is by opening up different niches and by increasing the amount of transference of DNA between species which are in the edge and in each of the ecosystems which are next to it. But at the same time, you have to have the established biomes by themselves, because if you don't, it will still decrease diversity. All right? And we'll talk more about that in the next part of the lecture series when we're going to go and talk about biodiversity and its value.